They didn't just whisper this behind palace doors, they allegedly uncovered something so explosive that it could shatter the carefully crafted image of Harry and Meghan forever. And the most shocking part? The louder these claims got, the harder the pushback became, but never the one answer everyone was waiting for.
Flew from Paris back to California to spend a night with the children. But
could Meghan Markle's pregnancy have been fake? Today's guest has some pretty damning evidence.
Meghan Markle's fake pregnancy rumours have intensified as Lady C has just revealed her thoughts.
Two figures, not random commentators, not attention-chasing outsiders, but two individuals with decades of deep embedded access to royal power structures suddenly start circling the same story. And not casually, not recklessly, methodically, carefully. Almost like they knew they were stepping into something that had layers most people weren't meant to see. And the moment their voices started gaining traction, something shifted. Not clarity, not transparency, resistance. Because here's what makes this impossible to ignore: neither of them walked into this with an agenda. Lady Colin Campbell, Lady C, someone who has spent over half a century navigating royal circles, understanding how information flows, how silence works, how secrets are protected. She didn't even want to touch this topic at first. She dismissed it completely, treated it like background noise, the kind that surrounds any high-profile couple, nothing more. But then something changed. It didn't come from tabloids, it didn't come from gossip blogs, it came from inside. Quiet signals, subtle discomfort, the kind that doesn't make headlines but makes people like her stop and pay attention. Journalists started calling her, asking questions she initially brushed off. But alongside that, something else was happening. People connected to the palace, people who had every reason to stay silent, weren't exactly speaking out, but they weren't dismissing it either. And that's when curiosity turns into investigation. Because when those closest to a situation don't shut something down immediately, it means something isn't sitting right. Now bring in Tom Bower, a completely different energy. A man who has built his entire reputation on exposing the powerful politicians, billionaires, figures who believe they were untouchable. He doesn't speculate. He digs. He tracks. He looks for what's missing just as much as what's visible. And when he turned his attention to Harry and Meghan, it didn't just create noise. It rattled them. Not irritation, not dismissal, unease. And reactions like that, they don't come from nothing. Now step back for a second, because this is where the foundation of everything starts to crack. Royal births are not casual events. They are structured, controlled, transparent by design. Every detail documented, doctors named, locations confirmed. A system built over generations specifically to eliminate doubt before it even begins. St. Mary's Hospital, public consultants, official records. It's not tradition for the sake of tradition, it's a safeguard. And then suddenly, that entire system disappears. No named doctors, no confirmed medical team, no clear records sitting where they should naturally exist. Just silence. And silence in a situation designed to be transparent doesn't calm things down. It creates space. Space where questions grow, where patterns start forming, where people start connecting dots whether they were supposed to or not. So Bower's team does what any serious investigator would do. They go straight to the source. The hospitals publicly linked to the births, Portland in London, Santa Barbara Cottage in California. Places where, under normal circumstances, records should exist as a matter of routine. Paper trails, confirmations, standard documentation. But what they found, or more accurately, what they didn't find, didn't close the conversation. It widened it. Because when something that should exist doesn't, that absence becomes louder than any confirmation ever could. And then Lady C steps in with something even sharper. She doesn't question vaguely. She doesn't hint. She states, the account of the Portland Hospital birth, in her words, a total fabrication. Not misinterpreted, not exaggerated, fabricated. Now pause, because up until this point, someone could still argue privacy, personal choice, a break from tradition. That argument holds until the professionals start speaking. And that's where things take a turn that becomes very hard to ignore. A retired labor and delivery nurse, 30 years of hands-on experience, thousands of pregnancies observed. She sees the footage, the photos, and something stands out so strongly that she feels compelled to say it publicly. She had never, not once, seen a pregnancy bump behave the way Meghan's appeared to. Not once in 3 decades. And then, independently, a seasoned midwife echoes the same observation. Same conclusion. No coordination. No shared agenda. Just the same unease. And when two experienced professionals arrive at the same conclusion separately, that's no longer coincidence. That's a pattern. Then more voices start layering in. Obstetric professionals professionals pointing out inconsistencies in the bump's size. Not subtle changes, the kind expected in pregnancy, but noticeable shifts day to day, even within the same appearance. One moment it's positioned one way, the next completely different. Same outfit, same event. And then comes the detail that keeps resurfacing. The constant holding of the bump, not resting, not protective instinct, holding, as if maintaining something in place. That distinction didn't come from internet speculation. It came from professionals trained to recognize the difference. And then the moment that keeps getting replayed, a deep squat, late in pregnancy, in high heels. Midwives didn't hesitate. They said it plainly, this didn't align with what a body carrying a child at that stage can physically manage. And just when it feels like it couldn't get more specific, the purple dress, red coat moment. Same day, same outfit, same setting, but the bump visibly different, shifted, not gradually, not naturally, visibly. And when multiple professionals independently flag the same moment as something that doesn't align with their experience, it stops being a single oddity. It becomes a collection of moments pointing in one direction. And here's the unsettling part. Each individual detail on its own could be dismissed, explained, brushed aside, but stacked together, they start forming something harder to ignore. And just when it feels like this is all about physical observations, Lady C shifts the entire conversation into something even more subtle and arguably more dangerous. Words, precise wording, the kind that doesn't get used accidentally in royal communications. Because sometimes what's said matters far less than how it's said. Because once you step into the world Lady C operates in, language isn't casual. It's calculated, deliberate, and every word carries weight that most people don't even realize is there. And that's exactly where she focused next, on something so small it almost slips past you until you hear it the way she did. Both birth announcements carried the exact same phrasing, not born to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, but born for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Now, to most people that sounds like nothing, a minor variation, a harmless wording choice. But in the circles Lady C has spent decades navigating, that difference is not minor, it's surgical. Born to imply something direct, something biological, something carried. Born for points somewhere else entirely. Something arranged, something received. And here's the part that keeps pulling people back into this. It didn't happen once. It appeared twice. Two separate announcements, two separate moments, same exact phrasing. Now ask yourself, what are the odds of that being accidental? Because in royal documentation, especially around something as sensitive and historically protected as birth, repetition like that doesn't happen by chance, not with that level of precision. And suddenly, what looked like a grammatical detail starts feeling like a signal. Now layer that with what happened next, the moment Archie was first presented to the world. One outlet, one American broadcaster granted exclusive access, and not just any broadcaster, one with an existing connection to Oprah Winfrey. And at that exact time, Oprah was already in discussions with Harry and Meghan about future projects. Now again, on its own, coincidence, timing, industry overlap. But when you place it alongside everything else, it starts to feel curated, controlled, almost like every piece of access was being filtered through a very specific lens. And then comes the moment that people can't unhear once they notice it. Harry, speaking about his newborn, casually says how much the baby had changed in 2 weeks. 2 weeks! And Meghan, standing right beside him, corrects him instantly. 2 days. Not subtle, not brushed off. Corrected, and nobody follows up. Not the interviewer, not the media. No one in that room pauses to question how a father could mistake 2 days for 2 weeks when talking about his own newborn child. The clip exists. The moment happened. And then it just disappears into the noise. But here's the thing, it doesn't disappear for everyone. Because when you start lining these moments up, the wording, the access control, the timeline slip, it stops feeling like isolated incidents. It starts feeling like pieces of a larger picture, one that isn't being openly explained. And this is where the conversation shifts again, away from what can be seen and into something even more uncomfortable, money. Because strip away the titles, the interviews, the narratives, and what you're left with is a reality that doesn't get talked about enough. A financial structure that isn't as solid as it looks from the outside. According to Lady C, Meghan entered this marriage with a very specific expectation that Harry represented immense generational wealth, hundreds of millions, a life secured without question. But what she allegedly encountered was something very different. A man whose financial stability was deeply tied to the institution he would later walk away from. And that gap between expectation and reality wasn't small. It was defining, because from that moment on, everything had to be rebuilt. And not just rebuilt casually, but strategically. A brand was created, not accidentally, not organically, constructed. The perfect couple, the love story that defied tradition, the pair who chose authenticity over royalty, the independent power duo thriving on their own terms in California. That image wasn't just personal, it became product. And like any product, its value depends entirely on belief. People have to buy into it, emotionally, publicly, financially. And that's where the pressure starts to tighten. Because when your entire income, relevance, and future depend on maintaining a specific image, any crack in that image becomes dangerous. Not inconvenient, dangerous. Tom Bauer pointed directly at this when he broke down the Netflix deal. On paper, it looked like freedom, a massive opportunity, a clean break from royal dependence. But underneath that, there was a cost that didn't show up in the headlines. Because that deal didn't just give them independence, it tied their identity to performance. Their story became content. Their lives became narrative. Their image became currency. And once you're inside that system, there's no easy exit. You can't suddenly shift direction without consequences. You can't dismantle the image without risking everything attached to it. And here's where things start to feel even more intense. Because outside of that constructed image, the other ventures haven't delivered the same impact. Not at the scale expected. Which means one thing. That image, the perfect family, the flawless narrative, isn't just important. It's essential. It's the foundation holding everything up. And when questions start circling that foundation, questions that don't fade, questions that keep resurfacing no matter how many statements are made, that's when pressure turns into something else entirely. Because every attempt to control the narrative, every strongly worded response, every carefully timed post, every effort to redirect attention, it isn't shutting the conversation down. It's feeding it. Because people notice patterns. They notice what gets addressed, and more importantly, what doesn't. And right now, the thing that isn't being addressed is the one thing everyone keeps coming back to. Not interviews, not statements, proof. Something simple, direct, final. One step, the step that would end everything. And yet, it hasn't happened. Not once. Not even as the conversation grows louder, more detailed, more persistent with time. And that absence, it's starting to speak louder than anything else. Because at some point, people stop asking what's being said and start asking why something isn't being done. And that question, that's the one that refuses to go away.